What is up, you guys? Welcome to Illumination Lab. My name is Justin, and welcome to a new series we're calling Digital Junkyard. In this series, we'll take 3 pre-made assets from Kitbash with completely different styles, and we'll break those assets down to make something completely new out of them. In this project, we're making a diesel punk style ship that we are calling the Salty Squid, and we'll be doing that using these 3 assets. I'm excited for this one. This is going to be a fun one today. So without further delay, let's get into it. Alright, so hopping into Kitbash here. There is several different kits here, but we're just going to jump into this diesel punk one. And then as you can see, we have a ton of different options here. So we will actually kind of take our time here, just kind of find a couple different one of these that actually works with kind of what we're going with. So again, with this, we're doing some sort of diesel punk styled ship. So I'm thinking something that is a little bit more kind of gritty, just something that is kind of just all over the place. So with that being said, we'll probably try to grab some of these assets here that has multiple different materials and just kind of a different overall shape. So I want to try to get a lot of different, pipes, maybe different glass, and then just maybe a few different types of shapes so we can kind of play around with that. I think this factory one here is actually pretty nice because we do have a lot of different pipes kind of coming out of the building, so we can kind of play with that a little bit more. And then we can actually go in and maybe select on some of these and kind of zoom in a little bit more just so we can kind of see what we're looking at here. So these are the apartments that we just brought in here. So a lot of really great stuff with this, especially with the gears and also some of this just metal structure in general. So I think we will have a lot of fun with this one here. Just exiting out of here, we do have this one called the fuel station, and this one has not so much here. I mean, we could probably take advantage of this big tank on the top, but I think there might be something a little bit different for us. And then we'll just zoom into this factory here, and I just think this is a little bit more complete, so we'll just bring that in here. And then we do have some others as well. I actually like this refinery tower here just because I really feel like we can kind of do something with this shape here. So let's just bring that in as well. And then next up, what we're going to do is just kind of scroll on down, and we're just going to click on the cyberpunk one here. And let's just go ahead and zoom in on this one. And I kind of like this because this kind of gives us that nice bright sign. And so instead of doing like a traditional flag of some sort for a ship, you might just kind of use this as somewhat of a alternative here. But yeah, I kind of like both the sign, and then maybe we can kind of do something else with it. So let's just go ahead and bring that in as well. And then lastly, we are going to import this ship as well, and we'll probably go ahead and take off the balloon aspect of this and then just kind of retain the ship and then kind of go from there. So let's hop into Cinema4D and get started. All right, so we have all of our assets here that we imported. So I'm just going to kind of move these around here just so we could kind of get started on this. Perfect. So I'm just going to select our blimp and then turn everything off just so we can kind of focus on this for the time being. So I'm just going to zoom in here and kind of get into a perspective. And so first thing here, we're just going to take off this balloon, and then we're just going to start to kind of deconstruct this. So let's see here. I'm just going to kind of look around here and see what we have. So let's just go ahead and take these off, and then same with this other side as well. And let's go ahead and remove the flag. And I think that will be okay for now. I'm just kind of looking around here, but let's actually make this a little bit bigger here just so we can kind of see a little bit more. Cool. And then we'll just go ahead and give that a quick save as well. All right, so I'm just going to get into perspective here. And then we're just going to bring in a Redshift camera. And we're just going to kind of bring that down and just kind of turn that off for the time being. So I'm just going to zoom back out of our perspective, and we're just going to turn on all of these assets here, and let's see what we can kind of do here. So again, with this, we're going to deconstruct a lot of these different pre-existing assets, and then we're just going to build something completely new out of this. And so by the end of this is going to look, I'm sure, completely different here. So usually in the beginning stages here, I just kind of like to zoom into some of these assets here and just kind of take a peek at what they have. And so right off the bat, I think we do have a lot of different really unique pipes and just kind of a lot of really fun stuff in general. So this is kind of fun because it kind of allows you to be a little bit more creative here with kind of designing something new. Let's actually go ahead and remove this here just because we need probably a little bit more room to kind of play with as far as these assets go. So I really like the top part of this tower here, so we're going to try to maybe isolate this the best we can, but I think maybe using this and kind of putting it along the ship would be nice. And this pipe that's kind of wrapping around the tower here is quite nice as well, so we'll definitely try to utilize that just because it's a kind of a nice shape here in general. So I think we can kind of make something kind of dynamic here. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete this here, and I'm just going to take a quick look around, and then we're just going to zoom in and start deleting a lot of this here. So again, I want this top part, and so we're just going to kind of deconstruct most of this here, but I'm going to really try and make sure that we kind of keep a lot of those pieces, such as the different gears and the different pipes here, so we can kind of use that a little bit later on. But really, again, we're just trying to get that top part, and we'll do something quite nice with it. So let me take a quick second here and just kind of clean up this mess here. So all right, so we have this top portion here, so we can go ahead and kind of slide this over, and then we're just going to kind of bring this over to the ship. And then what I was thinking with this one is to somehow have this horizontal on the ship here, and so I'm just going to rotate this about 90 degrees and then just kind of bring this down here. And actually, let me just kind of flip this over to this other side. And then maybe this is just going to be some either massive tailpipe or just some sort of massive cannon of some sort. So, but I think this would look pretty good here, especially near the back, and then just somewhat larger as well too. So let's just kind of situate this here. And really with this too, I'm just kind of playing it by ear, so I'm just kind of experimenting as I go here, but I think maybe having some sort of massive piece back here would look pretty interesting. So let's just maybe reduce down the size and just kind of fix this here. And let's actually maybe place this here for now, and then just kind of figure this out as we kind of go along here. So we'll just kind of leave that in place. Let's actually go over here and let's actually select these guys here. These are quite nice. Let's bring these over, and maybe we can kind of have this sitting on top of this pipe that we just brought in. So let's actually reduce down the size here and maybe just kind of bring this down. And maybe just kind of situate it there. And let's kind of move this over just to make sure that it is somewhat even. Cool. And then we can also go back here, and there is a lot of different gears here, so we can also kind of play around with that as well. So let's go ahead and find these and just kind of bring this out of the null. And I just want to kind of bring in all of this here, so both gears here, and then also the chain as well too. And I'm just kind of taking a look here just to make sure that I'm grabbing all of this here. And then I'm just going to bring in a null and bring all of that into this null. And I have renamed gear. And then I'm just going to go ahead and bring those over and kind of fix this to the ship here. So I think maybe having something somewhat in the middle of the ship could be quite nice here. So let's actually just zoom in here and kind of adjust this. And I kind of like the idea of just having a lot of these assets just somewhat oversized here. And so I think we can really kind of create something that is just very kind of chaotic in general. It kind of goes with that diesel punk or, you know, post-apocalyptic sort of theme here, where it's just there's a lot of stuff that's kind of almost looks like it's just kind of thrown together. So we're just going to try to recreate that sort of look here. So let's actually kind of keep those there. I do like those, but I really don't know where we want to really put those at. This is quite nice as well, especially with the gears on the top. I think we can find something quite interesting with that too. We can even have it where we have multiple gears kind of set aside together. So let's go ahead and bring over this one. And then I also do like this tank as well. So we'll just go ahead and grab that and bring this over. And I'm just going to kind of bring this up and bring this off to the side. And we'll just go ahead and rotate this. Now I do like the idea of having this tank either attached to this exhaust of some sort, or, you know, maybe somewhere adjacent to it where it looks like it's somewhat connected to this. Let's actually bring this up, and maybe we can adjust this somewhere else. Let me just make sure that this is somewhat even on the ship, and then I'll just kind of bring this down. Now we could do something like that where we kind of have it kind of laying on top of the ship like this. Again, this beginning portion here is just kind of a lot of experimentation and just kind of playing around with a lot of this stuff just to see what might look nice. So a lot of this might change kind of as we go along, but I think that's one of the things I definitely find enjoyable about this. Is it's almost like a Lego set where you're kind of building something completely new. So I kind of enjoy that aspect. So we could maybe bring this over and kind of have this tank kind of on the edge here and just kind of hanging out. But I think I kind of like this more inside. Let's go ahead and increase the size here. And just maybe set this up maybe about here. And then I'm just going to kind of put this in place, but I'm just going to delete a lot of this other stuff here. So I'm just going to go in and we're just going to highlight all of this and delete this. And then I'm just going to kind of clean up the rest here that didn't get deleted. And then we're just going to go ahead and delete this as well. And just kind of clean up that. Cool. So we have our tank here, and that is looking nice so far. We can take this gear as well and just kind of bring this down, and we can maybe kind of line this up maybe about here. And let's go ahead and reduce down the size here. And I really want to kind of make this just kind of hang out on the side, or maybe we can kind of have it split where there is a part of this gear that's kind of just inside of the ship in general, and then we see the other side kind of poking out on the deck side here. So I actually quite like that. So let's actually copy and paste here and just kind of move this over to the other side. Now, I don't want to really do too much stuff here just because I like them, but they're almost like a placeholder just to kind of sit there before we kind of figure out what we really want to do with them. Now, I do really like this pipe here, so let's actually bring this over and we can kind of rotate this here about 90 degrees here and kind of bring this down and bring this over. Now let's give this a quick save and just kind of shrink this down. And then we can maybe rotate this a bit. And I kind of want to have this on our exhaust here. So I'm just going to maybe situate that there. Let's maybe rotate this just because I do want maybe one of these pieces kind of touching the top part here. So let's kind of move this up and maybe, yeah, something like that where this pipe kind of goes in here and it kind of wraps around. So I kind of like that idea. It does look a little funky, but kind of like that how it is here. But let me see, just kind of playing around with this. Let's actually reduce down the size, and then I'll just adjust this. Let's just kind of move this over. And I think maybe that will be okay for now. Of course, we can always adjust that later, but I think that is looking good there. Let's readjust this and kind of just move this over. Cool. So let's actually see what we have with the rest of this here. Now we do have all of these pipes here as well. So let's actually bring this over and kind of try to figure out something for this. So again, we want to do something that is somewhat messy here. And so I think bringing in a lot of these pipes kind of helps fill in the scene quite nice here. And then just kind of bring this down and reduce down the size. Now we could do something on the side here that could look kind of interesting, especially kind of wrapping around most of this deck here. Let me go ahead and delete that. Now we could maybe just kind of situate this maybe about here and bring this over. And just kind of adjust it here, just because I do like having some of these pipes kind of go through this wall here, but let's just kind of situate it just to make sure it's not clipping too much into this. So what I'm going to do is actually go into our exhaust here, and we're just going to delete some of this. So I'm just going to delete this here, just so that there is room for this pipe. And again, this is going to be more of like a post-apocalyptic sort of thing, so it looks like this is kind of thrown together. So I like having some of the messiness to it. I think having some sort of aspect where some of the stuff really doesn't make sense is quite nice, or maybe just in general where it doesn't look like it's supposed to fit there, where, you know, someone has taken this piece and kind of applied it here. I kind of like that look for kind of what we're going for here. So I'm just going to kind of clean up the rest of this here. Cool. So a lot better there. Now I'm just going to copy and paste our gear null, and we're just going to move this over. And I like this look where we have multiple gears just kind of side by side here. And I'm just going to adjust that to the side. I definitely like that look. I think maybe that gear might take up too much like visual real estate, but I think that's kind of what I like though. Let me see. Let's actually rotate this here. Bring this up and just bring this over. And I like the concept of maybe having this on the second level as well. So, and bring this down, move this over. And so maybe about here would be nice. It is a little too big, so we might actually just reduce down that size and rotate this. And kind of similar to what we have on this other side here, we'll have this where it's kind of inside of the boat. But I'm just trying to make sure that this is in the right spot here. Maybe about there, and then we can kind of have it kind of snug inside of this pipe area. I'm just rotating the camera here just to make sure that we are not clipping here. Now let's just grab these pipes and readjust it here just to make sure that is fitting nice. So let's just zoom out here and maybe see what else we have. I actually like the color of this here, so let's just try to identify which one that is, and let's actually maybe replace that red at the bottom of our ship with this color. So let's just zoom in here and let's grab our material and just place this where our red is here. And what's cool is we not only get that color in, but we also get some of that texture as well too. So that's actually kind of a cool look there that we kind of accidentally stumbled upon there. Yeah, that could be kind of interesting. So let's go back over to our factory area, and they have this really cool sign here. So let's actually bring that in. And what I was saying about that salty squid sign, we could maybe do something similar with this here, where instead of a traditional flag of some sort, we have something like this. And I think that just kind of adds to the overall story or look to the ship. I think maybe adding in elements similar to this is really important to really kind of tell the story of what this is, instead of just having some sort of aesthetically pleasing piece. I think if you want to go up another level, you can add in something like this where it's just kind of helping portray some sort of story or some sort of background of some sort. So let's actually maybe attach this to the tank for now. And I think especially when rendering, we can have some really cool different looks as far as maybe getting the sign in the render somehow in a somewhat of a dynamic way. We could push this a little bit more where we can add in a deformer. And let's make this a child and fit to parent. And we can adjust that strength there. And so with the strength being adjusted, that kind of makes that back portion kind of pivot a little bit more. So I kind of like that, where it's just kind of almost off center there. And I think that adds in a little bit of character there, which is quite nice to have. So let's actually just adjust this and then really just kind of make sure that this is situated appropriately here. Cool. So looking good there. Now I did have an idea with this tower, and we can maybe bring this over and have some sort of almost like a crow's nest of some sort, but I don't think that's really going with what we have so far. So let's just delete that. Let's zoom back in here and see what else we have to play with. And I kind of like this here. I like how there's multiple of them here. So let's actually kind of move this over and just maybe put this on top of the deck, maybe as some sort of exhaust pipe as well. And again, with this, I'm kind of reminded more of a steamboat of some sort, where there's multiple different pipes or just exhausts in general. And then same with our gears as well too. It seems like a big influence on that, even though we are making something completely different with this diesel punk type style here. So, and really with this, I'm just trying to get this in the right spot. Let's actually copy and paste there. And we can even do something like that where it's somewhat symmetrical. And I'm just kind of looking around here just to make sure that that is actually what I want there. And yeah, that's probably good for now. Let's bounce back over to our other assets here. And again, we still have a lot of different pipes, so we definitely want to take advantage of these. And I really like the intricate shapes here of what they look like. So let me just zoom back in, rotate this. And again, just like I said, it has kind of a different sort of shape here, so I really like that aspect where it's not just some sort of a straight line here. You have a lot of different facets to it. So, and I think by having that too, it kind of makes it a little bit more interesting or dynamic in general. So, all right, so let's kind of figure out where we want to put this here. I like it on its side. Let's actually reduce down the size here. And then just kind of bring this up. Let's move this. I'll just reduce down the size here. Now we can have something like this where we have these pipes just kind of attached to this wall here. But let's maybe move this just because this looks like a vent, and so I just don't want this attached to the vent here. But the situation we're running into is that some of these pieces here are not really attached to this wall here. So let's move this over. And just kind of figure out what we want to do with this. I really don't want some of these hanging. We can maybe jam these into the wall here, just so we don't have to see most of these here, which kind of solves our problem here. Or what we could do is just rotate this 180 degrees and just adjust it then. And so by doing that, you have this cool effect where this pipe is wrapping around this edge here, and we'll just fix that here real quick. We can even have this pipe going into this other one here as well, and just bring that down. Cool. So that looks pretty good. So again, I want this to be busy, but I also want some of this to kind of make sense. It's kind of a juggling act here. So, but I think if we zoom out here and look at our ship so far, I think it is looking quite nice. We have a lot of stuff that kind of makes it a little bit busier. We do have that sign to help kind of tell a story, and then we have attached a few different pieces that kind of wrap around the ship as if it was kind of designed for it. So let's actually go over here and just take a quick peek. We do have these, which are quite nice. I like this because they are rather thicker here and somewhat of a larger size. So I feel like we can do some interesting sort of looks with this. And I can maybe wrap this around here, or we can maybe rotate this and have it wrapped around like this. And I kind of like how it kind of snakes around some of this. We can even bring this to the back here. Let's maybe shrink this down just a tad and just kind of adjust this. I actually like this. If we just pull this back a little bit and maybe just set this here, that is nice. And then what I'll have to do is just go in and delete this bottom portion, just because we don't need that. So I will just highlight all of this and delete this here, and we'll just kind of go in and clean up most of this. Cool. So that is looking pretty nice there. And I think kind of adding that in brings in a little bit more depth in general. So I like that as a nice addition to the ship. All right, so next up, let's bounce back here. I'll just kind of check out what else we have. Now we have this. So this is a really interesting shape and kind of just a strange overall look. We can maybe bring this to the front here. Again, I'm kind of reminded of a steam-powered boat when I bring this in. Now, I think that is a cool look, but I don't know if that kind of goes with what we're really going for here. So, but let's just see what else we have. We do have some more of these. So let's bring this over. We can always use more of these types of materials here. We can maybe make this a little bit more interesting by attaching this. Let me reduce down the size. And kind of situate it to the side here. Maybe just kind of move this here slightly. I think that looks okay. We can go back in here. Maybe grab this one. And then just kind of bring this over. So I do like more of this top portion here. Again, more of those curved pipes. We can always just rotate this, and then we can bring this over. And just really adjust it to here. Now I like this being on the second deck here, but I don't know, we could maybe flip it to this other side, but let's just kind of play around with this. Maybe like that. Let's rotate this about 180 and then just bring this over. Let's go ahead and delete this. And then maybe I can move this back over here. Now, also what I've been thinking about as well is I might just render from one side. So maybe we can kind of get away with a few other things on this side here that we might on our other side. But I'm just going to kind of make a mental note of that while we're constructing this, that we can kind of cheat a little bit just because of our perspective. But I kind of like the idea of this being attached to this exhaust up here. Again, kind of adds in a little bit more depth and different material here versus what we have already. Let's go back over here and see what else we can kind of play with. This actually might be interesting. Let's actually grab this here. Now we can maybe rotate this here. And this looks more of like a cannon of some sort. So let's reduce down the size. And I think this would look kind of cool attached to this tank. Yeah, maybe right here in the middle and just kind of bring that out. Yeah, that looks pretty good there. All right, so let's actually turn on our cyberpunk asset here. And again, like I said, I want to bring in the sign and maybe some of these other things as well too. And then we can maybe have this at the top here. Again, almost as a replacement for some sort of flag. And to kind of add in a little bit more character as well. Or we can maybe kind of put this off to the side here. Let's actually maybe situate it here and just rotate this. Again, just kind of give it a little bit more character here. Man, I just don't like that placement. Let's maybe tuck it in under here. I think that is actually kind of a unique spot because you do have the pipe kind of coming around there. Let's actually make that a little bit larger. And I'll zoom in here. Maybe just shrink this down a little bit. And then we'll go back into our asset here. Let's actually grab this here and bring this in. And again, similar to the other ones, I do like this because it is a different type of shape here. So we just got to kind of figure out how we're going to fix this in here. And maybe have it like this where it's kind of wrapping around the front. And then we can take this other one and maybe kind of take this near the back here and kind of situate it on top of this tank. We can even go back in and grab a deformer and fit the parent and move this over. And then just adjust the strength there. And with that, we have a little bit of distortion, which is nice. Again, adding in a little bit more character to our scene here. And I'm just going to turn off that deformer just so we don't have to kind of look at that through the render view. So I think we're about halfway through or so. I'm just kind of looking at what we have so far. Now, let me just go in here and let's copy and paste and move this over. I do like having two of these kind of somewhat next to each other. Just kind of add in a little bit more depth there. And again, just kind of looking around. We do have this pipe here that's kind of hiding in the back. So let's grab that and bring this over. And again, similar to our one that we brought in that is on the top here, I do like the size of it compared to some of the others. So let's just readjust this here and maybe put this here next to this other one. Now we could rotate it where it's kind of pointing this other direction. Cool. So we can go back over here and just kind of peek around at what else they may have. And I'm just going to bring this one over just because this gives us quite a different shape here and just a different look in general. So let's rotate this. Now we could do a few different things with this. Now we can have something that's quite crazy and have this somewhat large here, but don't think that really looks right here. So let's try to resituate this. Let's reduce down the size and kind of maybe put this here in the middle. Again, just so it's kind of facing our perspective and kind of adds in a different sort of shape. Maybe some sort of electrical box or some sort of mechanism here. And I'm just going to adjust it. Now we can maybe go back and grab this here and move this over. And maybe let's put this maybe near the front here. We can rotate this and just reduce down the size. And I like this because of the angle that it's at. It's kind of wrapping around this gear. And so I want to kind of press this as close as possible without having any sort of clipping. Cool. I think that is quite nice. And I'm just taking a peek here just to make sure that that is looking right. So I think that is pretty much it for most of our construction process. So I'm just going to take a quick second and just remove all of these assets from our nulls here, just so we can delete those out. And then I'll meet you right back here once that's done. Cool. So that is looking good. We have our ship. So let's kind of build a environment around this. With the diesel punk, what I want to do is maybe do some sort of a sand theme here. So let's bring in our Redshift render view and just kind of put this in perspective here. And so immediately this is our ship. Let's go in and select fit to window, and let's throw in a dome light. So immediately there isn't a ton of materials that carried over. So from deleting those assets, some of our materials are not showing correctly. So we're just going to kind of fix that real quick. Let's go and grab a Redshift tag and turn all of this on. Cool. So this is what we're looking at so far. So let's go ahead and really start with kind of building up the scene here. I'm just going to isolate this area light here, and I'm going to try to find some sort of dynamic look with this area light here. I think maybe moving this area light to the top would be quite nice, especially establishing some sort of light source within our scene. So again, I kind of want to do more of a desert theme, almost like a Mad Max sort of look here. So I want to maybe have some sort of sun that is on the top here, and then let's just copy and paste here and see where else I would like a nice highlight here. So actually, let's hop into Grayscale Gorilla and click on our HDRIs, and let's maybe bring in some sort of sky here that has some sort of haziness to it. And right away here, this is good. Let's go ahead and pump that in. And then let's go to this one as well and just pump in that same texture and turn off the background. And then same thing with this one as well, just so it's nice and cohesive. Actually, instead, what I'll do is just delete those. And I'm just going to bring in this new area light here. And let me put this maybe off to the side here. But I'm just going to kind of add in somewhat of a warm color here. Maybe to the top here like we had it before. And maybe just kind of reduce that down just so it's not so bright. Now let's bring in a landscape here and just kind of fix this to the bottom of the ship here. So again, this is going to be some sort of sand here. So we're going to kind of push up our segments and increase our roughness, and really just trying to situate this here. Maybe rotate this a bit. and just kind of expand this out. And then I'm just going to hop back into our materials here, and we have a lot of different options here. And so I'm just trying to find some sort of sand-like texture that's somewhat rough and has like a lot of detail to it. Let's see. Let's actually bring in this one just to see how that looks. And let's just go and grab that and apply it here. We'll just go ahead and bring in a Redshift tag and add in displacement. And so I like the warmness of the sand there. It kind of goes with more of that exaggerated, you know, Mad Max sort of theme there. So I think that would look nice. Let's go ahead and make another null and just throw those into the null. And then we can kind of rotate our ship here again to kind of make it look like it's somewhat stuck on this sand hill here. And then we can just go into our camera and just kind of readjust it. Now we could maybe pivot it over here and kind of have that. And then let's just adjust our perspective to about 200 here. And then just kind of rotate this. And really here, I'm just looking at some sort of initial dynamic look here. And with this, I think we're going to make a few different renders out of this, but I just want one initial render here that is, again, somewhat dynamic where we can see most of this. Again, let me just adjust this where it is kind of leaning over. We can maybe zoom out a bit. And let's give that a quick save here. Let's grab this light and copy and paste. Let's move this down. Maybe situate this over here. Maybe off to the side here. We can also maybe increase our exposure for our dome light. We can maybe bring this down. And really with this, similar to our ship, I'm just kind of playing around with our lighting just to see if we can kind of stumble on something that is quite nice. We could rotate this light and kind of bring this over here and kind of give us somewhat of a different light source. Let's go ahead and maybe adjust the sand here. We can maybe try for a different seed. And I think that seed is okay. We can maybe take this light and just adjust this. Let's crank up that exposure again. Let's bring in another area light. And let's rotate this. And with this light, what we'll do is put in some sort of PNG here to create some sort of background. So I'm just gonna try to go find an image here that kind of works well with our pre-existing scene. And then I'm just going to take this light and kind of put this behind our boat here and reduce down our intensity to 2 and bring in that PNG. And this is kind of what I found that kind of matches with the overall look so far. So I like a lot of those oranges, which kind of matches with our sand here, but we'll definitely have to play around with this just to kind of have some sort of cohesive look. But I think this overall image is going to work well for us. And then what I can do is go into our pre-existing lights here and just kind of plug in the same sort of PNG, again, to kind of push out that same sort of light here. Maybe bring this a little bit closer, just to kind of create a nice little highlight on the top here. And then we can maybe adjust this light so we have this nice sort of highlight on the sand. And then we can maybe adjust the look of the sand by adjusting the light here to kind of give us more of a warm look. And then we can move this over to kind of where the light source is in our PNG, and we'll just adjust the intensity there. And then we can plug in that image again. And then that's what we can do, is we can go back into our settings here for Redshift and turn on some bloom, just to kind of give us some nice like shininess to the overall scene, and even maybe like a little haziness as well, which kind of goes more with that overall look. And again, I mean, this isn't specifically necessary, but this kind of adds in a little bit more creative direction here and just kind of overall cohesiveness. We could go ahead and turn on our LUT here and check out a few different options for our LUT. And I kind of like this where it is a little bit darker and kind of grittier. That kind of goes more with that diesel punk or even Mad Max sort of look. Of course, we have a few different options for our LUTs here, but let's see what we have. Ooh, I do like this one. This was kind of similar to that original one where it's a little bit darker. And then we'll just kind of readjust our bloom there. Cool. So I think I like that how it is, just because it's a little bit more cohesive. And then by bringing in that LUT, that also kind of brings in more of a similar sort of look as far as our sand goes, and it looks a little bit more cinematic. So I kind of like that. What we could also do as well is we can maybe bring in a Redshift environment, and we can do something like that to kind of bring in a little bit more haziness. So we can just kind of adjust it here and maybe box this out just to kind of see what that looks like. And then maybe reduce down the bloom. But it all kind of depends on what sort of creative direction you want to go into. Now I'm going to go back into our material here and just kind of adjust the strength of our light here. I think that is looking good. Cool. So what I'm going to do is just take off this Redshift environment, but I think this is pretty much it for our base. We can go ahead and render this out. Let's actually hop into the wrap-up section and finish this off. All right, so hopping into our wrap-up section. All right, so this is our 3 initial renders here. So I have one to the left here that is our boat here in kind of a unique sort of look here. And then we do have this one on the top right here where this kind of shows that sign here, and same with our sign where it says the salty squid as well. Then on the bottom here, I threw in a character and kind of made it kind of focusing a little bit more on this character here. And so a few different looks here in general. After rendering these out, what I did was I went ahead and adjusted some of the focus here so we get kind of a nice blur as well, and then added in a few different effects like some fog, and then really kind of mess with the bloom a little bit more and just overall perspective, so it looks a little bit more complete as an overall image. And so with the one at the bottom with this character, I went into Meshy and just grabbed something and brought him in here. And so again, just kind of playing around with the scene and seeing what we can do. Now looking back at this project, I kind of liked how this all kind of came together. This was a lot of different experimentation and kind of bringing this together as far as like a cohesive piece. I really didn't know really what this was going to look like here at the ends, but I am actually pretty happy with it. It's kind of interesting to see what you can kind of do with, you know, breaking down a lot of different assets and kind of creating something of your own. So, but yeah, overall, I like this quite a bit. I like the perspective I was able to achieve with a lot of these shots, and then just the overall like warm tone to this. I think it looks quite nice here. So other than that, let me know what you guys think. I had a lot of fun with this one. If you have any sort of ideas or any sort of kits you want me to play with in the future, definitely let me know. But other than that, you guys have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you on the next one.